Any other comments from any of the panel members? Yes, sir.
There we go. So if I may, real quick.
I skipped over. I apologize.
Oh, no problem. My name is Kevin Spies. I'm a veteran of the California Army National Guard and the United States Air Force. I had a longer observation, but I'm going to keep it short.
No, we're okay, as long as you need to go.
Okay, well, thank you. So as many of us watched the Gulf War unfold, and we had the campaign of shock and awe, many of us cheered when the bombs dropped over Baghdad, not understanding the impact that that was going to have and the rest of our operations were going to have on our sons and our daughters and our brothers and our sisters and our moms and our dads. And when you start to understand what the reality of those wars are, when you see people, when you see that some folks don't come back and that some folks come back not complete anymore, not just with limbs, but with their mind and with their sanity and with their mental well-being. You know, we hear quite often on the airplane, "Thank you for your service," you know, and I think, and that's nice to hear. It truly is. I thank you for taking the opportunity to promote the cause of the Veterans Treatment Court, because this is something that we owe to the veterans. It's what we owe our society. It's what we owe our moms and our dads and our brothers and our sisters. So with that, one person that Santos had touched on before, I want to call her out, particularly because of the problems that we've had with the U.S. DVA. Leah Norza-Garay, I'm sorry, Leah, that I'm getting your last name improper, but you know, she has been a shining light in the system for us. And it is important, in light of a lot of the negative things that have been said about the VA, to shine the light on someone who has done extremely well. And I hope that her example will carry on for the rest of the Veterans Administration. So with that, thank you, Leah, and thank you.
Let me give you all a hand. Let me assert one other thing, too. I spoke of some of the responsibilities and opportunities folks like the members of this committee have to serve you. But we have another role, too, and all of the people that work on your behalf in the districts that we represent. A good part of the time that we spend and our staff spend is indeed helping veterans ourselves as legislators with the agencies of state and federal government. So we have our own role. It's been a very moving hearing. Senator Roth, would you like to offer any closing observations?
Well, I mean, it occurred to me as I'm sitting here that, you know, I'm delighted that the Veterans Court operation is a success, and I think we should rejoice in that. But it also occurs to me that at the time that we're celebrating this success, in order for it to work, vets have to be in court. And I think it illustrates a fundamental problem and a systemic failure in our system, that we're not focusing on this issue at the beginning of the process, the early identification and treatment of these problems, both at the time that the vet is about to become a vet, at the Department of Defense installation involved, and thereafter. So, I mean, obviously I'm a tremendous booster of veterans courts, and I think we need to make sure that they get the funding that the courts need and certainly deserve. But I also think that as part of this process, we need to work on the front end as well. And I think we've clearly failed somehow in that regard if we're focused on, at this point, helping vets once they get into the legal system and once they walk through the doors of a courthouse. So I'm committed to that, and I thank you all for your service.
You're very lucky to have one of the experience in the military Senator Roth has. He's certainly your spokesman for you. I got a little ahead. Is there anyone in the public that has not yet testified that would like to come forward? Some of my old friends, please come on up here. I know Pete Connerty was chomping at the bit to get up here.
First off, last week's hearing and this hearing have been the best hearings the legislature has held on veterans issues since I've been in the Capitol. So I want to thank the committee for doing that. I want to address some of the issues because I think I can bring some clarity. The funding is a fundamental problem, and everybody has to take it out of their own hides. We have tried to, through the state legislature, get funding. Unfortunately, we've had 2 governors veto 3 bills on veterans treatment courts, which were totally permissive. But in this report, which you got last week, we devoted 3 pages to veterans treatment courts, and Duncan McVeckers deserves as many kudos as we can give him for all his work in establishing veterans treatment courts. But California is actually ahead of the rest of the nation when it comes to diverting veterans out of prison and into treatment and creating veterans treatment courts. The first veterans treatment court was created in January 2008, but shortly thereafter, no later than November of that same year, Santa Clara and Orange County had veterans treatment courts. So we still have a way to go. I would like to suggest that we the legislature look at using realignment dollars for veterans treatment courts and also for some funding for county veterans service officers, because county veterans service officers are pretty maxed out. And we developed, as the governmental advocate for the county veterans service officers, we developed a thing I just realized is called if we build it, they will come. So for the last 10 years, we've been giving county veterans service officers a lot more responsibility and jobs and duties in the state law, but without giving them the funding to do it. So they're pretty much stretched out to the max. I do have, if you would like to consider committee bill, drafted language asking the Judicial Council to gather this information and submit it to the legislature. I also have drafted legislation which would restore to judges the ability to allow veterans in their courts to give them limited driving privileges. And this has been requested by the San Diego people that work in the Veterans Treatment Court, because evidently over time, judges used to have that discretion, and now they don't have it anymore. It's all just one size fits all. The DMV takes away your license, and that's it. So we would like to see legislation to give judges some discretion to give limited driving privileges. You heard about having to use public transportation to take your kids to school, but also to treatment and the distances involved. Concerning Prop 63, there has been resistance by some county mental health groups to funding veterans, but we seem to be overcoming that. But the other thing, we cannot force people, and I'm sure the judges and prosecutors, we can't force people to divulge that we're a veteran. And that's why we did SB 1110 by Hannah Beth Jackson that says, make sure they're informed that they have the right to ask for it. So, but again, I just want to thank you for the hearings you've been holding. Thank you very much.
I believe there's a bill too at voluntary, but the veteran can request a designation on the driver's license.
Yes,
legislation
sir.
Going.
Well,
Senator Roth.
This is government agency to government agency. So why wouldn't the court system be able to, the state court system, for example, or the state district attorney's office be able to access the DMV or the CalVet records
You know, honestly, sir, I had not thought about that, and I do not know what that is, but that's something we obviously need to look into. And maybe John he's a CVSO.
The only thing that I've heard about that, I'm John Melrose. I'm the Placer County Veteran Service Officer. When it comes down to the state agencies sharing information across databases, it's more of a privacy issue.
We can fix that.
Absolutely. And if it can happen, we would be all over it, because we get DMV information from CalVet for veterans, and we mail them a card and say, hey, if you're interested in benefits, come in and talk to us. And we do have some success. But some of the other agencies that we deal with that have contact with veterans don't necessarily share that information.
Well, and of course, the purpose of this hearing is Veterans Court, so we're talking about a justice system and a judge in a courthouse, and the ability of the judge in the court system to access information in another state database simply to identify whether John or Charlie or Jane is a veteran ought to be fixed. If I can, one more, Mr. Chairman, the driver's license issue. Pete, that would be, this is, I guess, a DUI situation where the license has been lifted, and
yes,
yes, I assume the courts can still allow driving for the limited purpose of getting to and from work?
Not
anymore?
No, not anymore. They have lost all discretion on their ability to grant limited driving privileges, is my understanding.
Sorry, Pete. I was actually in Veterans Court a few months ago, and I had texted Pete and asked that very question, because we had a person in Placer County lose that person's license. And he stood up and said, sir, I cannot go to my treatment because I cannot drive back and forth. It's that simple.
We'll check that out. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
John.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, my name is Don Harper. I represent the American Legion in California. We have over 100,000 members, legionnaires in California. My quick comment is there is a relationship between housing, as you mentioned earlier, housing and the Veteran Treatment Court, and homeless. So I'm hoping all those three variables come together to connect all the dots, because if a veteran goes to a Veteran Treatment Court, has no place to go after the court system, no housing. It's so important we have housing for these veterans, and there's a lot of money coming down for housing for veterans, as you well know. From the Legion perspective, we are strongly supporting expansion of the Veteran Treatment Courts in California. It's a win-win for the courts, saving a lot of dollars. It's a win-win for the veterans needing treatment. It's a win-win for all taxpayers. Finally, it's a way to respect our combat veterans as they come home to adjust to today's complex society. They fought for us, and now the Veteran Treatment Court will fight for them. Thank you.
Well, let's hope that this hearing and the airing gives impetus to the expansion of the Veterans Courts. You bet, Mr. Harper.
Thank you.
Please.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me? My name is Leah Norsagaray, and I'm with the Department of Veterans Affairs here in Sacramento at Mather, and I'm the Veterans Justice Outreach Specialist for Sacramento. Well, I cover 4 of our 17 counties: Sacramento, El Dorado, Placer, and Amador. And there are Veterans Treatment Courts in Sacramento, El Dorado, and Placer counties, and I'm in those 3 courts. First, I want to mention we've talked throughout my notes. We've talked about a lot of stuff. In some of the counties, it is very difficult. We do partner with the VA. Obviously, the courts partner with the VA. I am that liaison to create. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I help the veterans to create their treatment plans, hook them up with the services, whether it's mental health, substance abuse treatment, housing, employment. We use a lot of community partners, a lot of nonprofits for all of those things. But county mental health is not something that we, at least in the 3 counties that I work in, I can speak for. County mental health is strapped, so we use the VA services, which is, it's my job, so that is totally fine. I want to mention that in Placer County, however, and I don't know how many other counties are doing this, but in Placer County, they've partnered with their mental health, the Department of Mental Health for that county. So there's a Veterans Treatment Court coordinator in that court, and she's a adult services of care clinician. So with that partnership, which I would encourage in a lot of other counties, that partnership allows for us to take in veterans who are not VA eligible. So we have a small amount of veterans in that court, for example, who were dishonorably discharged, bad conduct, other than honorable discharges, that we can serve in the court because they have access to county mental health services and facilitated through that coordinator. We just don't have that ability in a lot of the other counties because that county chose to do that. So that expands their abilities. You know, those particular veterans then are serviced totally by the county and are case managed by that particular worker. And I just do all the other ones. I know that I can't emphasize enough the partnerships that we have with our community, with our nonprofits. We have a lot of veterans that come back and are, if they did know about their VA benefits, they may be distrustful of the system. It's another government system that's very difficult and it's very complicated. It takes a very long time to get claims through. Although I know our, at least appointment calendar has cleared up very well in Sacramento, but you know, we're waiting how many years for people to get claims through. So it's a system that not a lot of people want to deal with, or are not healthy enough to deal with yet. So the partnership with our with other agencies such as like Soldiers Project or Sacramento Veterans Resource Center or Volunteers of America, all of those organizations make it possible to get to get treatment to our veterans in a comfortable place. Our vet centers, for example. So if they are not comfortable coming to the VA, they still have all those options. And so I don't want to leave out that piece of our court, is that we can talk to lots of other agencies. And housing, yes, that is always something that we need, that veterans need assistance with. The VA doesn't have it right now. We partner with other agencies to do that. It is something that I know I work very hard on trying to help people navigate the system to get to their housing needs, because if they don't have someplace to go, sobriety doesn't always mean a whole lot, unfortunately. But with that, thank you very much. And if you have questions, I will
Mr. Chair.
try to answer.
Yes, Senator Roth.
You know, one of my concerns is that with Prop 41, as we roll out over the next series of years, maybe 5,000 beds in the state of California throughout the state, we've not yet been able to figure out how to provide, at least my understanding, is the mental health and supportive services to the folks that we're promising for these facilities. And so to the extent that our mental health and supportive service delivery system is impacted today, when we actually take 5,000 people or more, some off the streets, and we put them in facilities, which makes them, you know, available for services, our system is going to be even more impacted. And so to the extent that USDVA, you know, has capacity, that'll be great. But to the extent USDVA doesn't, we're going to have to figure out a way in the state of California to deliver these services to folks that not only are entitled to them, but we've promised them. So I'll look forward to working with you and your counterparts to find a solution. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank all of you for participating. Oh, I'm sorry. John, I'm getting ahead of you here. Excuse me.
That's perfectly okay.
You're a hometown guy, for God's sakes. I should know that better.
My name is John Melrose. I'm the Veteran Service Officer for Placer County. I was here at last week's hearing, and I wasn't on any of the panels. I came to this one mostly because I'm the closest VSO that we can get here on relatively short notice. I also have a very interesting pedigree. I came from VBA. I worked at the Pension Center in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for 5.5 years, and I worked at the regional office in Reno, Nevada for a year. And it's very important to understand, and a lot of people miss this very subtle fact, you're not talking about one central VA who has overall control. You're talking about VBA, which Lee is a member of and does an amazing job. I said AJ. Oh, sorry, VHA. VBA is where I came from. Benefits and hospitals do not talk to each other. Or if they do, it's very limited and it's spotty. I have access to systems that Leah does not because she works at the hospital. I hired a VSR, a veteran service representative from the hospital, and I have to go through hoops to get her access to VBA systems. Big big, major difference. We have tremendous support within the Veterans Court community from VHA. It is absolutely amazing. I've never seen anything in 15 years of working with veterans, both in the military and in private life, other than this. This is stunning. They're doing amazing work for these folks, and they definitely have earned that. And the hospitals are doing a great job getting it all lined up. The VSOs make the link between the hospitals and the benefit side, because we take the claims that the hospital workers can't file and file them, and then we follow up within VA. When that happens, if we get a claim back, like Mr. Espinoza has an 80% rating, I know what kind of rating that is. I know what's going to happen with that rating, and it's a very easy thing for me to explain. But you have to have the experience of doing it, and that's where the Veteran Service Officer comes into play. If we have the ability, let me back that up. If we know of the problem, we will deliver that information. One of the little anecdotes that I've made huge within my county is the difference between veteran and serving in the military. First and foremost, there is no difference between serving in the military and being a veteran. However, people will not self-identify as a veteran, but they will self-identify as being in the military. That alone will increase anybody's mention of being in the military quite a bit. Because if you served in Germany in 1972 to 1975, are you a veteran? Absolutely. But you weren't in Vietnam, so that person may not think that they were a veteran. They just served in the military. It's a huge difference. It's very subtle, but it makes all the difference in the world. I know that it makes absolutely no difference. You served, you're a veteran, end of story. But we have to make that we have to make that differentiation so that everyone understands it. We do support Form 100 when it comes in. I've got my first few through the Veterans Treatment Court where I can verify service if Leah cannot. If I cannot pull it up because I only hold 7 powers of attorney and it's with a power of attorney that I don't hold, I can pick up the phone and call someone, my old friends back in Milwaukee or St. Paul, Leah, or some of the friends that I'm developing in Oakland, ask a simple question: is this person in your database? It's yes or no. If it's no, great, we start from the beginning and we go forward. If it's yes, okay, where are they at in the process? We can jump in and now we can expedite. We can start to move those claims forward because we know what needs to be done with the claims. And just one last thing that I will mention, TAP. We've heard a lot about TAP. I don't know if you realize it, but TAP, I believe, is run by the Department of Labor. Okay? There's very little, if any, local influence. I've actually heard of base commanders not allowing local veterans representatives onto the base. We have in our possession, now we have something from the Secretary of Defense that gives us permission, which is entertaining. But we have to have that document in our possession in order to access a base to give information. At Beale Air Force Base, which is the closest base to my county, Placer, we have an outreach specialist from the VA there. And Nick Sacramento does a great job of filing claims. When he gets overloaded, they come to us and we help him at that point. When we work together when we can, how we can, and sometimes in spite of ourselves. But the biggest differentiation is hospitals are doing a tremendous job, but they're not benefits. The benefits side, that's what we do.
Mr. Chair, may I just,
Please.
This TAPS thing infuriates me.
Yes,
and
sir.
I've said this for the last 2 years, and I will say it until we fix it. If the Secretary of Defense cannot issue a letter to military installations in the state of California directing the participation of government employees in the TAPS program, then some of us need to go back there, but we need to be informed of the current state of the land in terms of what the rule is.
Sir,
And
I have that letter for you.
If the Secretary of Defense issues a letter to installation commanders in the state of California that state representatives will be an integral part of the TAPS program, then something tells me, based on my limited military experience, that state representatives will be an integral part of the TAPS program because it'll be on somebody's inspection checklist when the inspection team hits the base.
Yes, General, it will, and I can get you that letter.
What gets measured gets done. So we need to fix that issue, and we might as well fix it right now. And if we need to get, I've said this, I had a member of the House Veterans Committee on the phone with an undersecretary of the Veterans Department, and I mentioned this issue. They were not aware of it. If we need to have several of us on the phone with the members of the Veterans Committee and some USDVA representatives, we'll get them on the phone and we'll fix the problem. Because I'm a firm believer in the fact that we need to start at the beginning of this process to try to keep some of the clients out of the Veterans Court at the end of the process.
Yes, sir. And I will make sure that I get that letter the letter that I have to your office today.
It's enough of my lecture. Thank you, Mr. Chair. You do a great job. Thank you, both of you.
Well, I want to thank my colleagues. Each member of the committee has been present through the course of this hearing here today. They've been some in and out because of other commitments, but every member of the committee has been in attendance here today. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your time, every bit of information you brought us. Judge Perez, Judge Abbott, and Judge Perez, you came all the way up from Orange County. We appreciate you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, this is only the start. This is not the finish. We'll continue to work with you.